There is an ideology that invisibly dominates almost every aspect of our society. It seeps into every nook and cranny it can find, from the cities to the countryside, from our jobs to our homes, from our schools to our political system, and even into our relationships with each other and with the planet. It burrows down into the deepest values we hold, such as freedom, dignity, and choice, and uses them to its own advantage. This ideology has gripped us so tightly that its logic has become intertwined in our own conventional wisdom. You may have never heard its name before, but this ideology is real, it is dangerous, and it is finally being exposed. This ideology is neoliberalism. What is neoliberalism? There are many ways to answer that question. You can call it a philosophy, a movement, a political project, or even a set of social values. In its most basic form, however, neoliberalism is an economic ideology that exists within the framework of capitalism. When observed at its philosophical origin, neoliberalism appears as an absolutist mantra that proclaims that a government or state must never intervene in any market or economy, even to provide welfare for its citizenry, lest it put society on a slippery path towards socialism and totalitarianism. The market, which is the wellspring of human freedom, must be allowed to operate free of any constraints or regulations. Anything less is to diminish the freedom of all human beings and place civilization in enormous peril. Practically speaking, neoliberalism refers to the various ways in which our society has elevated competition above all other conceptions of economic rationality, retasked the state with liberating competitive markets, and put increased responsibility onto the private individual to guarantee their own survival. Neoliberalism conceives of the world as one big interconnected competitive market, where human beings derive their freedom from their ability to express their preferences through consumption and represent their value through their ability to sell their labor for wages. Since all people enjoy equal access to and opportunity within this competitive market, inequality between winners and losers is permitted. And because neoliberalism asserts that there is an unbreakable link between economic and political freedom.
Assalamualaikum everyone, we are Group 1 from KAM2384B. We would like to present about our topic of neoliberalism theory on international relations. So now, we start for the introduction for this topic.
Alright, neoliberalism is a political and economic ideology that emphasizes free market, privatization, deregulations, and limited government intervention in the economy. The word neo means news, so neoliberalism can be understood as a modern form of liberal economic thinking that focus mainly on economic freedom and market competitions. This is because neoliberalism believes that the economy more efficient when individual and private companies are given greater freedoms to make the economic decisions without too much government control. Supporters of the neoliberalism argue that free market competition can encourage the innovations, productivity, efficiency in the economic growth. Because of this, neoliberalism supports reducing the roles of the government in economic activities and increasing the role of the private sector. The rise of the neoliberalism became more significant during the 1970s until 1918. During that time, many countries faced economic problems such as inflation, unemployment, slow economic growth, and financial crisis. Government believed that heavy government interventions in economy was no longer effective. As a result, neoliberal idea become more popular around the world. Right, so for the next part is founding fathers. So I will start with the first one, which is Adam Smith. He was a philosopher, economist, and writer who became famous for developing ideas about capitalism, free market, and economic liberty. He is widely known as the father of the moderns of economic because his ideas shaped the foundations of capitalist economic system that used around the world today. So Adam came up with several main ideas. So the first one is the free market economy. This is because Smith believed that the economy works best when individuals are free to buy, sell, invest, and compete without too much government interference. This is because, according to him, competition forces business to improve the quality and lower price which benefit the society. For example, when many businesses compete to sell the same product, of course, they have come out with the innovations and offer better service for attract the customer. The second is the invisible hand. It means that when individuals pursue their own self-interest or profit, they indirectly benefit society and the economy. For instance, for a businessman open a shop to earn profit. So, to attract the customer, he must provide a good quality product, offer reasonable price, and give good service. As a result, society also benefits. Right, so the second furthest is the Friedrich Hayek. So, it was one of the most thinkers in the developments of modern neoliberalism. What Smith laid the early foundations for free market economy in the 18th century. Hyatt modernized this idea during the 20th centuries, especially during the Cold War period. It's because Hyatt believed that too much government control over the economy could eventually destroy the individual freedom. It's because, according to him, free market, private property, competition, and limited government interventions were necessary to preserve liberty and the economic prosperity. So the Hyatt also come up with the main belief. So the main belief is the free market is the best system. It's because he believed that market work better than government because market contain information from millions of the individual. According to him, consumers know what they want, business know how to produce, good efficiency, and price help coordinate the economic activity. So government, on the other hand, cannot fully understand or control the complexity of the economy. Hyatt argued that when government interfered too much, it built efficiency decrease, innovation slowed down, corruption increased, and freedom become a threat. So the third father is the Milton Friedman. It one of the most important figure in modern neoliberalism, especially in the 20th century. It's because Friedman was one who translated neoliberal idea into practical economic policy that government could actually need to apply in the country. Friedman believed that the best way to achieve economic growth and individual freedom is through a free market economy where supply and demand are not mainly controlled by the government. This is because, in his view, when markets are left to operate freely, they become more efficiency, innovative, and more responsive to the human's needs. So it comes out with several ideas. The first idea is the privatizations. It means that transferring government-owned companies and service to a private ownership. Friedman argued that private companies is usually more efficiency because they are driven by profits and competitions. For example, a private electricity company will try to reduce costs and improve the service quality in order to attract the customer. So why the government-run company may become lost efficiency due to the bureaucracy. So the second is the deregulation, which means that reduced government rules and restrictions on businesses. This is because Friedman believed that too much regulation may slow down economic activity and discourage the investment. So by reducing the rules, business can grow out. So that's all from me. I will pass to the next presenter.
Assalamualaikum. My name is NAJWA. I will explain the theory of neoliberalism in international relations. First, neoliberalism is a theory that explains how countries can cooperate even though the international system is anarchic, meaning there is no central authority controlling all states. Instead of focusing on conflict, neoliberalism believes that countries are willing to work together when they share common interests and can achieve mutual benefits. According to Ogubanjo 2021, cooperation can be maintained through repeated interactions, trust building, and the support of international institutions. Next, the main argument of neoliberalism is that cooperation between states is possible despite the absence of a world government. International institutions such as the United Nations, World Trade Organization, and International Monetary Fund encourage cooperation by creating rules, monitoring behavior, and reducing uncertainty. Neoliberalism also argues that economic interdependence reduces conflict because countries depend on trade and investment. Additionally, it emphasizes absolute gains, meaning states are willing to cooperate as long as all parties benefit from the agreement. Finally, there are several key concepts in neoliberalism. The first is cooperation, where countries work together to achieve common goals. The second is interdependence, which means countries depend on one another economically and politically. The third is international institutions, which help maintain trust and stability among states. The fourth is absolute gains, where all parties benefit from cooperation. Lastly, there is the cheating problem, which refers to the possibility that some countries may not follow agreements. Therefore, international institutions are needed to monitor compliance and maintain trust.
Now we move on the characteristic. I will explain the characteristic of neoliberalism theory on the international relation. The first characteristic is cooperation between the states. Neoliberalism believes that countries are able to cooperate with one another even in an anarchic international system. This is not to say that there is no world government or that these countries are not controlled by the others, but they operate peacefully together. Countries can achieve mutual benefits like enhance the trade, security, economic growth through the cooperation. This idea is supported by the Onwanjo, who explained that the neoliberalism emphasizes the cooperation as a rational policy for state in the international politics. This characteristic highlights the fact that neoliberalism is not exclusively about the conflict and competition, but it also on collaboration between the states. States recognize that there are more benefits to cooperate than conflict. Many countries cooperate within the agreement of the country's climate to eliminate environmental issues like global warming and pollution. This is an example of how with the corporations the world is kept stable. The second characteristic is the economic independence. Economic independence refers to the economic relationship between the country in the form of trade, investment, and globalization. Neoliberalism assumes that if there is an economic independence between the countries, they will seek cooperation due to the fact that conflict would have a negative impact on them. Militarism generates mutual sensitivity and vulnerability between the states. This is the case that what happens in one country that have a direct impact on another, and that therefore cooperation is more beneficial than conflict. That is, the countries will not go to the war if it has the potential of harming trade ties, investment, and economic growth. Thus, economic cooperation is more advantageous than a conflict. For instance, China and the United States are still trading when they have a political tension. Despite the situations, economic ties are still formed between the two countries, as there is some advantage in the trading and investing. It is a reflection of the concept of absolute gains of the neoliberal concept, which is oriented towards overall gains without considering the relative advantages. Moreover, the third characteristic is the complex independence. Even within a complex system, do not occur independently, but are connected to each other. Complex independence refers to the fact that countries are linked in a numerous aspects, including the economic, technological, environmental, and the community. Today, international relations are manifesting in a many channels of interaction, not only between states, but also between non-state actors like international organizations or multinational cooperation. This is also a theory that says that in international relations, things don't only have to be done with force, as a cooperation is sometimes needed to solve the problem in the world. It reflects that international relations are nowadays very interconnected. The global problems cannot be solved by one country since many are shared among the multiple countries, such as the need for international cooperation in the cybersecurity and climate change issue. Climate change has a global impact, and the cyber attack can be cross-border via digital networks. Therefore, states need to coordinate and share the information to tackle these issues successfully. So that's all on my part. Thank you.
So next, we move to the impact of neoliberalism on international relations. Neoliberalism has significantly shaped the way countries interact with one another in the modern world. So the first impact of neoliberalism on IR is the rise of international institutions. Neoliberalism gave birth to and strengthened major international organizations that govern global affairs today. The United Nations, the World Trade Organization, and the International Monetary Fund are all living products of neoliberal thinking. These institutions provide a platform where countries, big or small, can negotiate, cooperate, and resolve conflict without going to war. Neoliberalism taught us that states are more willing to follow rules when institutions are in place to monitor and enforce them. Secondly is economic interdependence and globalization. So neoliberalism accelerated globalization by promoting free trade and open markets. When a country are economically linked, buying and selling from each other, they have a strong reason not to fight. This is known as a complex interdependence. A clear example is the relationship between the United States and China. Despite political tension, both countries remain deeply tied through trade, which has prevented from a direct conflict. The third impact of neoliberalism on international relations is peaceful resolution of conflict. Because of neoliberal frameworks, many international disputes are now settled through negotiation and diplomacy rather than war. Bodies like the World Trade Organization handle trade disputes between nations. The United Nations Security Council mediates political conflict. This shift from battlefields to negotiating table is a direct impact of neoliberal thinking in IR. So lastly, promotions of human rights and global norms. Neoliberalism also pushed for the spread of universal values such as human rights, democracy, and environmental standards through international agreements. Examples include the Paris Climate Agreement and various United Nations human rights conventions. This shows how neoliberalism expanded international relations beyond just state interests into global shared responsibilities. To summarize, neoliberalism has impacted international relations by building institutions, deepening economic ties, encouraging peaceful diplomacy, and promoting global norms. It fundamentally changed how we understand cooperation between nations. I will now pass it on to Mira for our lesson learned and conclusion.
Now I would like to discuss the lessons that we can learn from neoliberalism. One of the most important lessons is that cooperation amongst countries is not only possible but also necessary in today's world. Neoliberalism argues that countries can achieve more through cooperation rather than through constant competition. While every country has its own interests, many global challenges are simply too large for one country to solve alone. For example, during the COVID-19 pandemic, countries shared medical information, vaccines, and research through international cooperation. This shows that when countries work together, they can respond more effectively to global crises. If countries had acted completely independently, the recovery process would have become much slower and more difficult. Another lesson is the importance of international organizations. Neoliberalism emphasizes that organizations such as the World Health Organization, the United Nations, and the World Trade Organization provide platforms for countries to communicate, negotiate, and solve disputes peacefully. A recent example can be seen in climate change negotiations. Countries continue to work together to reduce carbon emissions and address environmental issues through international conferences and agreements. Although these agreements still exist, these institutions provide a mechanism for dialogue instead of conflict. The next lesson is that economic interdependence contributes to peace and stability. In today's globalized world, countries are connected to trade, investment, technology, and also supply chains. Because countries depend on each other economically, conflict often becomes costly for everyone involved. For instance, when tensions occur between major economies such as the United States and China, the effects are felt worldwide because many countries rely on both nations for trade and investment. This demonstrates how interconnected the global economy has become. Neoliberalism also teaches us that diplomacy should be prioritized over confrontation. Rather than immediately resorting to conflict, countries should engage in dialogue, negotiations, and cooperation. While conflicts still occur in the international system, diplomatic efforts often help prevent disputes from escalating further. Finally, neoliberalism reminds us that globalization has created a world where countries are increasingly interconnected. Issues such as climate change, pandemics, cybersecurity, migration, and economic crisis cross international borders. Therefore, solutions must also involve international cooperation. Overall, the main lesson from neoliberalism is that cooperation, communication, and interdependence are essential for maintaining peace, stability, and development in the modern world. In conclusion, neoliberalism shows that even without a world government, countries can still cooperate to achieve common goals. It emphasizes the importance of international institutions, economic interdependence, and diplomacy in promoting peace and stability. Although conflicts still exist, cooperation and dialogue often provide better solutions than confrontation or even war. As global challenges such as climate changes, pandemics, and economic issues continue to affect every country, neoliberalism remains highly relevant in helping us understand why international cooperation is essential in today's interconnected world.